So we've been going over Punnett squares in the lesson, and this is an example. Here we have two parents. The top one is the female parent, and this one on the left side is the male parent. And both of these are dwarf rabbits. We know this because if we look at the genotype here, we can see that there is a dominant allele and a recessive allele, and the same for the male parent, a dominant allele and a recessive allele. So if we were to cross these parents, we would have a dominant and dominant allele. We would have a recessive and a dominant allele for this second, a dominant and recessive for the third, and then a recessive and recessive allele for the fourth. So here, if we're looking at percentages, we can see that 25% of the offspring will be a regular sized rabbit. A regular sized rabbit has two dominant dwarf alleles, and that 50%, so these two, would be dwarf rabbits, because we can see they have one dominant allele and one recessive allele, and the same for this. And this percentage, the 25%, would have two recessive alleles, which means unfortunately that this rabbit will not survive because a double recessive allele genotype is fatal. Okay, so if we come over to Minecraft, we're going to make a Punnett square calculator in Minecraft. So what you can see here is the front part of our calculator. So this is the frame like we would have if we wrote out a regular Punnett square calculator. And the top row of red blocks represent dominant alleles, and the same, all red blocks represent dominant alleles, and all emerald blocks represent recessive alleles. So if we're going to do the same problem that we just did in Paint. So if we have one dwarf parent, then we would have one dominant allele and one recessive allele. So this is for the maternal parent. And if we come over to the side, then we will adjust the levers for the male parent. So one dominant allele and one recessive allele. So if we take a step back, we can look at our results and see that we have two dominant alleles here, one dominant and one recessive allele, one dominant and one recessive allele, and two recessive alleles. So that means 25% will be regular sized rabbit, 25% will not survive, and 50% will have the right genotype to make them be a dwarf rabbit. So if we come back to Paint, we see that we had the exact same result. We had 25% will be regular sized rabbits, 25% will not survive, and 50% will be dwarf rabbits. Now what would happen if our Punnett square problem looked like this? If we had the female parent with two dominant alleles, so she's a regular sized rabbit, and the male parent with two dominant alleles as well, so he's also a regular sized rabbit. So let's go back to our Minecraft calculator and see what the results would be. So we would have one dominant, and the dominant's already turned on here. We need to turn off the recessive. gene and turn on dominant. And we'll go over here and do the same for the male parent. So that dominant gene is already turned on. So let's go down here, turn off the recessive allele, and turn on the dominant allele. So let's take a step back and see what our results are. So we can see here that we have 100% regular sized rabbits. So all alleles are dominant. And if we go to our paint square, we can see that the results would be the same. We have dominant all the way across the board. So let's try some other combinations. If we had, let's say, one dwarf parent, so one dominant and one recessive allele here, and then let's pair it with a male regular sized rabbit. So we have the dominant allele, turn on here, and then we would need to have the dominant allele turned on there. So we would have two dominant alleles for the first 25% of the offspring, one dominant and one recessive allele, 25 or another 25, so 50% total, would have dominant alleles, and then another 25% or 50% total for this part would have one dominant and one recessive allele. So that means that 50% of the offspring will likely be regular sized rabbits and 50% will likely be dwarf rabbits. So does it make a difference if the dwarf parent is the male or female parent? Well, let's see. So we had the female parent as the dwarf parent. So let's change the female parent to a regular sized rabbit. So she needs two dominant alleles. And let's change the male parent to the dwarf parent. So he needs one dominant allele and one recessive allele. So before we had 50-50, 50 dwarf, 50 regular. So let's see if our results have changed. And no, it hasn't. It's just in a different order. So up top we can see that we have 50% regular sized rabbits. They have both alleles as dominant, and 50% dwarf rabbits. They all have one dominant and one recessive allele. So let's go over how to make this calculator. Each lever is connected to two blocks. So this lever is connected to both dominant blocks on the left. Let's turn off the top one. So we can see that this lever over here connects to these two. The levers on the top connect to two going vertically. So this lever connects to these two dominant alleles. This lever connects to these two dominant alleles. This lever over here connects to these two dominant alleles. And this lever over here connects to these two alleles. This lever here controls the recessive alleles to the left, and this lever over here controls the top two right here. This lever right here controls these two, and this lever over here controls these two. So each lever connects to two different alleles. So that gives us two different options within each box. So if we want to choose that the parent will have a dominant and recessive allele here, or a dominant and recessive allele here, then we can do so. So let's turn off all of these. Okay, so these levers on this side will connect horizontally to two. So let's say, for example, I turn on this lever. We can see that it goes around using redstone as the activator, connecting to a redstone repeater, and there's a sticky piston over here. So when the lever is turned on, it activates the redstone, which then activates the sticky piston, which pushes forward the two emerald blocks that you see. So you can see this is on either side of the quadrant line. If we turn on the dominant allele, we can see that it connects around here. So this sticky piston and the sticky piston over here. So horizontally, it's rather easy. You just have to make sure that your redstone connects to the lever and the two sticky pistons. It gets a little bit more tricky, however, when you are trying to turn on a lever that goes vertically. So if we turn on a lever that goes vertically, we can see that we activated this lever and the redstone path here. So connecting to the lever and connecting to the sticky piston here. But this is a little bit more difficult. You'll have to build a path that has steps, as redstone cannot go straight down. So you can see here it connects to the lever, and it comes around and connects to the correct sticky piston down here. And let's say you want to turn on a recessive allele, then our recessive allele is activated here, comes down, and connects to this sticky piston. So it connects to this sticky piston, and all the way down here, this sticky piston. So you just have to make sure to give yourself enough room, and especially pay attention when you're creating a lever path to the sticky piston for one of the vertical paths, that you give yourself enough room.